Hello again, folks. The video for November 10th, 2017 is with Aristo, as you can see. And the title that he selected is Your True Agenda. So this should be interesting. Go ahead, Aristo. Thank you.
Thank you. We shall see how interesting it is, Ron. And it's good to be here again. I'm titling this Your True Agenda because last time we did a video that was kind of thrust upon me, but usually that doesn't matter because, you know, we pick upon the topics as they come, so to speak. And it was entitled The True Globalist Agenda. My emphasis, however, is not about what the true globalist agenda is, because we can just ask ourselves, yeah, so what? Whatever the true globalist agenda is, unless we are fishing for hopium, where we say, okay, the globalists suck, but they're not that bad, so yeah, maybe we won't have to worry. Or if they're so bad, we just give up and kill ourselves or live life as if it was the last day on earth. You know, unless we want to do something fatalistic like that and justify it, justify our own inadequacy, so to speak, or our own weakness of being, so to speak, our own sense that we are worthless, there's really no point getting to the details outside of how they relate to who we are. That means essentially that if the globalist agenda is to control us, how can we avoid being controlled? How can we actually not even avoid being controlled? I mean, what we need to do, in my honest opinion, is to harness what is being done to us. You see, from any esoteric point of view, or any even substantial point of view, or even scientific point of view, everything is energy. So the thing about energy is not really created out of nothing unless you know what nothing is. I mean, you can say that energy is created out of nothing if nothing is actually in itself something, meaning if nothing is a field where there is no structure or form, where it's a void, but it still has a certain substance. It's just that since nothing's going on, since it's immobile, since it's completely inert in the absolute sense of the term, we consider it nothing. Otherwise, you go into a state of oblivion, which is not nothing, it's negation. It's the other way. It's like, imagine a number line, okay? And you have a plus. In mathematics, you have that's a basic thing. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It starts from 0. And then you have -1, -2, -3, -4. And so 0 is actually the middle of infinity. Infinity goes to the minus, and then it goes to the plus. 0 is the only absolute point, but there is no end. So infinity. Infinity and 0, and everything exists in between. Now, I'm getting to this because we bandy these concepts about that we really don't understand. I mean, what is nothing? Oh, nothing. No thing. Does it mean that just, you know, there's no structure or no form or no action or no life or no whatever? Or does it mean oblivion, which is the negation of it? See, you're going to the minus end. So you have life, which is the positive end. We know this. We live in the world. We live, exist. Existence for us, or beingness, is the plus part of the number line. And 0 then is as close to nothing as we can get. Because after that, things start getting negative. That's a whole other zone. I'm getting very philosophical here. And I'm getting very metaphysical here because I want to establish a conceptual foundation of sorts. So please bear with me. Sometimes when we talk, Ron, you know, I like to express things in a thoughtful way to challenge the listener and the viewer to be able to think a little bit in a way that's not
Programmed?
That's a good word, program. But program, though, is a complex thing. You know, it's a whole structure of directions. Do this, and if you don't do this, do that, do the other. I mean, really, a program isn't just but what's being done to us is more like a prodding. You know, how you have a herd of animals and you're the shepherd, you know, a herd of sheep. So you just, you know, slap the head one. All you have to do is just find who the alpha male is in the herd of sheep or rams or whatever. Or you have sheepdogs, and they find the alpha male, bite its heels at one end, and I've seen them do this in Greece. And then the sheep goes this way, and then everybody else follows. So it's pretty easy, really. I mean, you got these. I have a sheepdog myself. My mother actually has it, but we got it, and it's there to guard the house and all of this. And it's a local sheepdog. It's really big, almost looks like a wolf, and they use these things to fight the wolves. But it's this really sweet dog, one of those zones where, oh, he's just a sweet dog, but if somebody else comes in or a threat, it's really scary. And he's all white, so he glows in the moonlight and stuff, and he's really smart. But these dogs, basically, they fight wolves, and they fight bears for the shepherds up in the mountains in the winter. It turns out, that any shepherd you talk to will say, well, I don't do anything. I just follow the herd. The dogs do, they just look to me to see where I want to go, and then they make the sheep go in that direction. And what the males do is then circle the herd, and the females rest at the feet of the sheep. And because they're white and brownish and have these colors that really blend into the with the sheep's fleece, so predators can't see them. What I'm trying to say is that this is an elaborate dynamic, but that's which we can compare to a program. A program basically is a really complicated set of happenings that make us go in a certain direction. And all we know is that, well, if we don't go in that direction, somebody's going to nip at our heels, or, we feel cognitive dissonance, or but if we do go in that direction, we are at peace, or we're left alone, so to speak, to be able to graze at our leisure, to engage in whatever distractions keep us from recognizing that we're actually being herded for some reason. Prodding is different. Prodding is as if there was one shepherd picking the alpha male of the herd, because we are, again, hardwired, shall we say, to follow the leader. So if the leader is one of us, sincere completely in all of this, and we follow the leader for better or worse, a charismatic individual or individuals, or ideal even human beings, they treat abstract ideals sometimes as real people. Just like some human beings treat their cars as real people, or their little dollies, or whatever you want to, some people would call that a fetish, but, human beings are fetish prone. I don't know, it's one of those boundary lines. Is it natural? Is it not natural? But it certainly can be corrupted through programming. So the thing is that sometimes we are programmed, sometimes we are prodded. My question is, can we tell the difference? Why would we want to tell the difference? Well, for the most part, it's, first of all, if you know what's going on, then you can establish a proper response. A structured response. You can have a structured response, you can have a spontaneous response, where you don't give a shit about what's going on. What you give a shit about is how you feel. And that's one way to respond, but that's how the shepherd, oh, look at the ram, he's going to go somewhere where I don't want him to go. So I'm going to prod him to go into a different direction, so the herd goes there too. So our feelings can be manipulated if they are unconscious, unquestioned, taken for granted, and especially unobserved. So we observe our feelings not to criticize ourselves, not to just sit back and let them happen no matter what. We observe them to understand what's going on and what they're trying to tell us. We don't just, accept our feelings blindly. Blind acceptance is not acceptance at all. Blind acceptance is blindness. It's denial. And, we fool ourselves with these notions that we're spontaneous and we're carefree and we just open our arms to the universe and we're loving. But in reality, because the outcome tells us so, we are in denial. Nothing ever changes.
Everything remains the same. We are what we are till the day that we die. That's a song that you just triggered the memory of.
Exactly. And that song is itself a program. Not because it's untrue, but because in reality, entropy and Murphy's Law are in effect, where everything is not the same. It just keeps getting worse, 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 worse. And then it goes back and fixes a little bit and then gets worse, worse. And then it fixes. But the thing is, and in the end, there's a crisis and then there's a reset. But the thing is, it's not that easy either. That's also a program. Things are far messier than that. The thing is, overall, in the average, yes, things do remain more or less the same, but not quite. We are not. Although, let's say, the globalist agenda is trying to impose a medieval feudal system upon us, we are still in the modern world. The medieval feudal system never had cell phones and computers. So it's a variation on a theme, but it's a very significant variation. Now, as I always say, you can almost bet on it in every video that we do. I go, where am I going with all of this? And where I'm going is the title of the video. Regardless of what all of this is, the question, not even the question, but the important thing is, what is your agenda? What your agenda is, what my agenda is. Everybody is scrambling due to our culture and in my opinion, our programming, to be objective. As if objective can save us. As if, if you know the truth will set you free. But again, and as in many other videos, I'm saying we confuse the truth for the facts as they are presented to us. The facts are essentially what our five senses tell us, but our five senses are always processed by the guy inside, by the evaluator, by the consciousness, by the mind, that runs the consciousness, or, the middleman, shall we say. Some people call that the ego and tell us to get rid of the ego. But if you, and it's ridiculous. What do you mean get rid of it? First of all, ego, what is that? Ego just means me in Greek.
It's identity.
It's identity, exactly. And then you go into these Freudian concepts that are basically, these concepts came from, 100 years ago. They're new. Some guy makes up all this shit, uses the word ego out of context, and then everybody's like, "Oh, get rid of the ego." And the thing is,
I know we did that in our discussion group yesterday.
Yes, and then it goes back to Indian tradition, where ego essentially is called ahamkara, which is really the sense of identity. Actually, it is the doing, the I do type thing, or the I maker. Okay, this is not identity itself, shall we say, but it is our response to identity, how we formulate identity, the stories we say about identity, and all the behaviors we have because of our assumptions about identity. That's the so-called ego structure, which is different than identity itself. Identity is essentially my reference point in manifestation, which is full of objects and things and people and relationships. It's my reference in relationships. So the way the consciousness works is, and meditators all know this, certain people who take psychedelic chemicals know this, is if you wipe out the reference point, you become one with everything. Because essentially it's unstructured. Unstructured consciousness is a unified field. It's an interconnected field. And then when you start structuring consciousness and say, okay, this is negated, this is accepted, this is referenced and structured this way, and how do we know the structure is right or wrong? Well, because it is physically defined. Our body, the bodies that we are, the physicality of us, our nature defines this. And so, yes, it's nature's way of setting us into a manifest relationship with everything else, or divine will, if you will. It doesn't matter how you interpret it, but the point is, identity is important. The thing that needs to be understood is that we need to claim that identity as our own. We need to, in basically, hands off. Everybody else needs to be hands off on our identity. So we need the sense of self, not the identity, but the perspective that the identity actually protects and defines and encircles. That perspective, the us, is the one who needs to be in charge. And that means we need a strategy, we need tactics, we need an agenda. Agenda just means, what are you going to do? What is your intention? How do you do it? It's not anal retentive obsessiveness with, I just forget about it. I just let everything happen, and that's fine. Let everything happen in the world, but you really don't let everything happen. You are programmed. And so your responses are actually predetermined. There are influences that seek to control you. Those don't disappear when you let everything happen, you know. And you cannot be a passive little child in the world. That's, children all let everything happen and do whatever. And look at how we live in a world where child molestation is actually the norm. You have all of these Hollywood scandals in the U.S. and all of this. Now Hollywood actually a global thing, whether it's the Chinese Hollywood, the Indian Bollywood, Chollywood, Bollywood, and Mollywood, and I don't know what, Nollywood, and all these scandals, and then occasionally they mention the pedophiles, so people know, we haven't forgotten about them, but it's basically, that's what isn't really being touched ever. If you're indicting somebody for molesting adult women, how much more should you get on their case for molesting little children?
Agreed.
And if people are arguing about the molestation of adult women who knowingly have gone into this place to get a job from a certain person, why aren't they arguing about the children with the same passion? Because people argue about things with which they identify. None of us who argue are really children. So if you had the little kiddies come up and start identifying with the danger of being molested, you would see a lot of little kiddie arguments, but that's low, it's not acceptable, it'd be crazy, because kids can't relate to that kind of thing unless it happens to them. And if it happens to them, they're fucked. Then they become adults and argue for totally other things, and they're probably easily manipulative. You can manipulate them more easily. So again, through all of this, it's important, not what happens in the world because we're just some stupid, weak person who needs to be able to respond, because we cannot respond. So we're constantly looking to create a better story, or what are the authorities telling us that's happening? Well, the authorities are liars. You said it yourself. And, but that's a conspiracy. It's too much. It doesn't matter if it's too much. If somebody is prone to the so-called facts or the so-called truth, then, there's no way they can get to that truth because the media is actually being controlled, or maybe not absolutely controlled as we would define the term, but some truths are allowed, some are, so you can't tell the difference. So you're always in the state of confusion if you are looking for the facts. However, if you change your strategy, if you actually say, I'm sitting here with my identity, as my identity, embodied as a human being, and this is what I know, that I'm a human being, there's an environment, and myself is a reality. I am not a fabrication. I am not somebody's program. I am not somebody's Frankenstein little monster. I'm not Pinocchio. I'm a human being. It doesn't matter how I was created, who created me, what did, if the Anunnaki did it, if the Archons did it, or whatever. And it doesn't matter if you're this flat, round, or polka dot, or elephants, What matters is, where do I stand with myself? And
how do I choose to respond? It's not I create my reality, but I do create my response.
I am my response. My response creates me. My response actually defines me. If I consider myself a good person, but I start hurting other people, I'm not a good person. Even though I might feel like a good person, actually that cross-wiring of, interpretation is called psychopathy. It's a form of, I'm just a really good person, and I end up hurting people constantly. Oh, I don't know I'm hurting people. Well, if you do it constantly and deliberately and you call it something else, like the ends justify the means. I mean, we all can make mistakes and hurt somebody, this and that on occasion, but, I'm talking about a consistent inquisitional type and justify the means hurting people, then you are not a good person. In the sense of how you would define it. Oh, there is no good and evil. You see, when somebody throws this at you, you go, well, am I being manipulated, or is there some truth in this? And we are afraid to explore this because we enter a state of confusion. You see, on the one hand, somebody's manipulating us. We might even be gaslighted, whatever. So we say, oh, yeah, you're right, or I don't know. And on the other side, it's like, well, why do I need absolute terms? The world is a messy place. Absolute terms exist, but so do intermediate terms. Everything is connected. So if you have white and black, you have all the shades of gray in between. Why are we afraid of those shades of gray? They are the bridge from one side to the other. We tend to be so stressed that we eliminate the shades of gray, and so we're left with black and white and no way to connect them. Gray depresses us. It shouldn't depress us. Gray is actually a transitional phase, and it's a wealth of shades. Because shades are just, if you add a different kind of frequency dynamic, then shades are colors. Colors are just frequencies, not just, they're much more, but in the sense of quantifying them, they're vibrations of light. So what we perceive as colors are vibrations of light, and you have a frequency of 900 nanometers, for example, or the way the waveform is measured is this, and then another one of 1,000 is that, another one of 500 is this. We see them as different colors, but they're really the same thing, light vibrating at a different rate. So in a sense, whether it's black and white or shades of gray, it's a rainbow spectrum. It's a spectrum. And it is a weakness to shy away from spectrum because we want this or that. We can't do both, or maybe even both and, because it would have white and black. See, it can get confusing when we try to be both and, but it's not a single thing. It's an accordion. White and black, when they get together, this is what happens. That can be a whole other video that we could do at some point. It's like, what happens when you engage both and with that attitude? Well, the two come together and create an accordion effect of a spectrum of possibilities. White and black, the simplest example here, come together and create an accordion, an expanded spectrum of all the shades of gray that are possible. And it's really a lot. I don't know if it's in the millions or infinite or whatever. So we have to be prepared for this. If we really want to start living the life of both and, we have to be prepared for an expansion of our options. And yet that's what we want, isn't it? We keep complaining about this. We don't have options. We're trapped. We can't do anything. We're controlled, But as soon as options, the possibility is offered in some way that somebody else does not guarantee, then we get scared and we enter cognitive dissonance and we want to shut down. You see, that's the fear, the risk. But risk is just a concept. What risk? The risk is the programming of our fear that comes from, and I'm all for fear. I'm not one of those people who says eliminate fear. Nature has given us fear to be aware of danger and to respond to it. It's part of our responsibility arsenal. So please befriend your fear. Don't shy away from it. Don't think it's an illusion or, false assumptions, blah, 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 whatever that stupid acronym is. These stupid memes, they're, in my honest opinion, they're part of the programming. They're the shepherd, our Christian religion with the shepherd image, which comes from ancient Egypt, with a crook. And we use the word crook again. I hate to do this. New Agers do this a lot. They use words and they say this word, that word. But the word crook, the shepherd's crook, and a criminal is a crook, So the whole thing of, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, the shepherd essentially, whatever they are, serves the shepherd. They are there for meat. They're not there because they're a veterinarian or because they're an animal lover or anything like that. So again, anybody who tries to control you, but then again, it may not be an immediate, simple person trying to control you. You can't identify. Finger pointing is rarely as accurate as we think it is. There are so many interpenetrating and interconnecting influence. What a tangled web we weave. And psychopaths are masters at weaving tangled webs. They love confusing us because their own fucking essence is their own psyche is chaotic. And they keep trying to be organized and efficient and control everything, because inside there's no meaning, there's nothing. They can't, the only purpose they have is going into the negative end of the spectrum of existence that I mentioned. Not zero, not just falling, zero is like this. Okay, you got life, you got zero, which is sleeping, and then you have death, which is negating life. So negating life is life moving in the opposite direction. It's killing. Death is not really the opposite of life. Death is the negation of life. There's a whole different thing. You know, we confuse things with our words, because I've seen people say we need death in the world. We need suffering in the world. We need pain, because there can be no pleasure unless there is pain. There can be no meaning unless there is suffering, you know, which is ridiculous. Okay, well, then I'm an agent of balance. And so what I do is run around and kill people, because everybody else is so nice. So somebody's got to be the bad guy. How stupid can you know, that's just kind of, I don't know what it is. You know, it's basically, at best, somebody thinks I'm stupid when they tell me that, you know, or they're stupid if they really think that, because it's a completely mentally challenged point of view, in my honest opinion, and not because I'm a moralist or, you know, we go back, see, whenever you try to, you know, correct a point of view, another part of the program comes in, because the program is, well, if you don't get screwed by this concept, we have this other concept to come in to juxtapose the first concept and lead you astray this way. If that doesn't work, we have the other one. You know, if you're observant, you can see these things at work in the way your mind works and in the way the environment or everybody else, because it's not just the psychos controlling us with their agenda. We live in a programmed society. You don't need that many psychos anymore. You got all your friends to do their dirty work. You know, you got yourself to do their dirty work. So I want to leave you with these thoughts, that no matter what you do and say, because in the last video, I really didn't want to talk about the globalist agenda, so to speak. I wanted to, I tend to post that guy's videos because it's another point of view that doesn't, he basically is, look, there's this, and then there's a controlled opposition, and both of them are operating, and this is how both of them operate. See, he's showing the spectrum between the two extremes. What my real message is here is, what is your agenda? I encourage you to establish it, because it's fun to design, and it's really fun in a way, even though it hurts sometimes, and it freaks us out because we think it's risky. And it really isn't. What's risky is being asleep and complacent. That's the real danger. That's what should terrify you, when everything is too quiet and too nice in the world we live in. So thank you for listening once again to this rant, and I bid you a fond farewell.
And thank you, Aristo. And as we say, namaste, and or there's a whole bunch of other words. Aloha, as my friend Valentine would say. All right, thank you.